So hello, today I'm at St Leonard's Church in Southminster in Essex, and I'm going to start this video the wrong way round really. I'm basically going to go into the church and have a look around there because they've got a class going on at the moment and they're going to close up shortly, so I'll take the opportunity to have a look inside and then I'll go through the history of the area. So now we've entered the nave of the church, and this is 58 feet by 28 feet. Originally it was built around 1120. And what I'll do is I'll go outside and have a look at that, the actual structure. This is the old south doorway here. And I will talk about the porch, because obviously we walk through the porch and it's a great interest. There's actually a door here which leads up to the old porch. Look at this old door, look. There we go. Doesn't get more original than that. Incredible. Oh, sorry. Oh no, it's just me. Thank you.
What was your name?
Paul.
Paul.
Butterworth.
Paul Butterworth.
Thank you.
I'm Pauline.
Oh, hello Pauline, lots of Pauls. So we go forward to the chancel. Now the chancel was built by Nelson's chaplain, Reverend Dr. Alexander John Scott. Now, Alexander Scott was here from 1808 to 1840 or thereabouts. This would be a Georgian chancel. See the sheer scale of it. Now I was told that these steps, originally this was the floor would be continuous, but these steps are added by a later priest there. Let's have a little look. There used to be an east window here. I guess this is a high altar area. And this was blocked up and this reredos was put in. Go a little bit forward. You can see the red and green marble there. And again at that time these Sedelia church seats added. Nelson said it's one of my favourite saints. Right, I'm going to go outside and leave the good people here to carry on with their class in peace. But I wanted to show you inside, so I would like to, if possible, get into the heart of the building. It's got a big old doorknob, look at that. Wow. Right. Okay, let's right, so I've got my bearings now. So let me start by saying that St Leonard's Church is in Southminster, Essex. And Southminster is a small town. Back in the day it was the fourth largest town in Malden district. I think it still is. It's 3 miles from Burnham on Crouch and it's 10 miles from Malden. And the town is surrounded by farmland and is located on the Dengie Peninsula, which itself is surrounded on 3 sides by the River Blackwater, the North Sea and the River Crouch to the east. It's 27 metres above sea level and the population is 4,400. So it's a fair size. Now the history of Southminster is very, very interesting. In the prehistoric period the town was essentially a coastal site. It's located on the Chenier Island with the North Sea Marsh. It was a type of raised sand dune. It'd be made of sand and shells. And in the Iron Age period, the salt was produced here, and crop marks on the ground confirm that a settlement was here. Now, in the late Neolithic and Bronze Age, finds were discovered during the railway construction in nearby Pandole Wood. Now, during the Roman occupation, from the 1st to the 4th century, a Roman settlement was also here, where St Leonard stands. By in the 230s AD, the Saxon shore forts had been built at nearby Afona, which is near to Bradwell-on-Sea. The Roman legionaries would most definitely have marched from Malden, Bradwell and Burnham-on-Crouch, so this was a central location for them. Now Burnham-on-Crouch at the time would have had a Roman fort, so literally from where we stand now to Burnham-on-Crouch is simply in that direction, which would be south. So in 654 AD, it's most likely that St Ced passed through here as well at some stage, due to the building of St Peter on the Wall Chapel at Bradwell. In 825 AD, Southminster was documented as being called Simonster or Simonster. So it's also likely a small wooden stone Saxon church would have been here. It's quite incredible to think of. So in 1066, the Bishop of London, of St Paul's, where St Paul's Cathedral is now, was the lord of the manor here, along with 15 freemen. And we also know that by 1086, when the Domesday Book was written by the Normans, Southminster was still ruled over by the Bishop of London. The Bishop of London acted as tenant-in-chief here and the lords, one of the lords, and also found out that there were 14 other men under the lordship. It's most likely that they were the same freemen from 1066. Southminster was a very large settlement in this time, having 11 villages and 41 smallholders and also 13 slaves. This put the village in the largest 20% of settlements recorded. I also counted a total of 21 plough teams. The most incredible, 1,996 sheep, which is most unusual, 11 cattle and 20 pigs. In the time of Canute the Great, the Danish Viking king, Canute had taken the land, or the lordship, of 23 householders in Southminster. By 1116, Richard de Belmes was the Bishop of London, and he founded St Osoph Priory not far from Clacton. Now if you go north from the Dengie Peninsula, it's a short sail across the River Blackwater. Now the powerful St Osoph Priory had endowed many churches, including St Leonard's Church. The abbots appeared to have ordered the building of the nave, which we're looking at now, the large building in the centre, around 1120. It's most likely this replaced an earlier Saxon church. In 1219, a vicarage was built by by the Bishop William de Sancta Maria, a fantastic name, to the east. So where those houses stand, there would have been a vicarage. And it actually stayed here until 1775. Now Southminster stayed with the bishops of London until the 14th century, when Southminster was divided into Southminster Hall and the Manor of Cage. So there were two manors then. And so the many sheep of Southminster brought a steady income to St Paul's of London and the lords here. But in 1540 that all changed in the English, or with the English Reformation of King Henry VIII. Now a mere 10 years later, a new king, Edward V, was granted Southminster Manor, and he gave that to Lord Darcy of Tolson Darcy. And so the manors passed from one lord to another, and by 1611 Charterhouse Hospital, London, owned the manor and all those sheep busily munching on grass, filling the hospital's coffers. And when I wrote this, it reminded me of the game of Monopoly, when one owns a good property and you can generate an income. Meanwhile, in the 18th and 19th century, Southminster grew and became the principal village of the Dengie. Two small windmills joined this busy village, and a malt house was added in 1828 to serve the many inns around this area. Schools and a poorhouse joined the additions, and in 1889 the railway came here. By 1911 the population hit 1,567. World War I and World War II made their mark also. Southminster itself came off badly, but soon after, in 1960s, housing was built to supply the nuclear workers of Bradwell, which is not so far from here. And now in the 2020s, a new nuclear power station is perhaps on the cards. Myself, I can understand local opposition to such a plan, for the Dengie Peninsula is most unique in Essex. But on the other hand, employment is so important. It's a difficult balancing act for these residents. Well, let's have a look at the church itself. So if you can imagine the lower section being built around 1120, it's built from septaria, stone and mixed rubble with a fair amount of Roman brick. Now if you look at the lower section, like I said, it's more or less original. The upper section there, where it's mostly flint, that was added to gain height in the 15th century. And above that we've got Georgian brick, and this was built in the time of Alexander Scott. All these windows are 15th century. This sundial, this was this was also commissioned by Reverend Scott. Let me just see if I can. And there is one of the original scratch tiles. So I believe there was two here actually at the time, before Reverend Scott put that piece in there. I also read that that was Also renovated, and there's another one there, look. You can see the lines there. So there's two on this south doorway. So that sundial was actually renovated in 2010 by the British Sundial Society. I don't know what that banging is. Now if you look at the eastern end here, eastern end of the south aisle, you can still see the remains of the 12th century arch. Brick arch. It's incredible. Noisy crows. You can see the original window on the east side there. It's been reduced in size. You see it's mostly, I don't know if it's cement, it's like a modern rendering. Concrete blocks. Now if you look at the north porch, which is in front of us, now this was built in around 1520. It's quite unusual because it's two-storey. It's got a moulded plinth with an embattled parapet. The lowest stage, if you look, it's got half angels and a trinity with two supporting figures. So you can see it's long worn. You can see it's, and originally I guess there would have been some statues in there. Also you can see on the jambs there, how the heads have deteriorated. Now inside, this is a Terrera, it's a tier Saron vaulted ceiling. It's quite unique in Essex. The boss in the centre, this represents God. And then you have the Son and the Holy Spirit, which is a dove either side. Again, it's all fairly corroded. It's still quite impressive. Now if we go outside, the side door of the chapel, There's a staircase for monks coming from St Joseph Abbey. Which is inside. You can see the stairwell that would go up there that we saw earlier. Now, what they believed is upstairs the monks would actually have accommodation up there. It's possibly a school. This tower here was built around 1120, or at least the foundations of it were. Again, this is built in 3 stages. It's been heavily rendered. Now the upper part would have been built around the 15th century. This is the west wall, and it's got a partly restored 15th century doorway, and above that a 15th century window. Now the bell chamber inside is 15th century. It's got 5 bells. Well, it's got 8 bells actually, but 5 of them are by Robert Catlin of 1744. And Robert Catlin cast bells at the St Andrew's Foundry in Holborn in London. He's very well known as the bell founders go, and interestingly St Thomas's Church in Bradwell-on-Sea also has 5 Catlin bells from 1744. So whether they bought them as a job lot and got a discount, I don't know. Who knows? They also added 2 bells in 1966. And if you look here, you can see a bit of a structural problem there. It's very interesting though, when you look at these buildings, you can see what materials have been put in there from all over the place. Now, St Leonard's, Southminster, is also famous for its Reverend Scott, for the Reverend Dr. Alexander John Scott, given his full name and his title, was Lord Horatio Nelson's personal secretary and ship's chaplain aboard HMS Victory for 2 years. Can you imagine that? And he served on many a British ship of war during the Napoleonic Wars. For Scott would become the rector here for many decades. I think I counted 32 years. And this was after the Battle of Trafalgar of 1805. I'm going to read you a paragraph from a book. This book is called The King's England, Essex. This was written by Arthur Nee in 1940. So basically, when we're in the thick of it in World War II. Many a bride and groom were married here. They signed the register leaning over the very table in which Nelson leaned, poring over his charts on the eve of Trafalgar. Here is not only the chart table from the Victory, but a bureau which Nelson used, and a mirror into which he must have looked. They are here because it was to this place that Alexander Scott, Nelson's chaplain on the Victory, his personal secretary and his friend, became a vicar after the Battle of Trafalgar. He brought these things with him and he gave them to this church. He was at the side of Admiral Parker on that day when Nelson refused to see the Admiral's signal, putting his blind eye to the telescope. Greatly did Scott enjoy the joke. "Audacious little fellow," he would say. It was Dr. Scott that was dying. Nelson whispered, "Thank God I've done my duty." And it was Scott who watched night and day by his body as it lay in state in the Painted Hall at Greenwich in London. Dr. Scott loved the quaint town in which he made his home after his exciting life at sea. He rebuilt the chancel and he set the sundial on the walls. He persuaded the Southminster people to raise funds to help the families of those who fell with Nelson at Trafalgar, and he framed a list of their names which still hang in the vestry. And we'll have a look at that picture which is inside. Let's have a little look. And that will be Alexander Scott there. Isn't that fantastic? Look how they lived. So he was a big part of this church. Now I'd like to raise this as well with you. This World War I memorial. It lists 60 names of men that died from Southminster during World War I. To put that into perspective, that is 5% of the population. Can you imagine that? Now during World War II, Southminster was on the flight path of enemy bombers, and this church sustained damage, a fair bit of damage. Now today St Leonard's Church is Church of England. It's a very well connected church with its community, and it carries out baptisms, weddings and funerals, and also found out they have a baby and toddler group and social events and even choir concerts. So if you get the chance to have a look, come down. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.